Brad, big big bombshell trade for the Blazers. While I'm over here in Europe,
Yeah.
rocking our schedule, rocking the world. I could feel it all the way over here. Blazers trade our boy Anfernee Simons, who we were higher on than most. I think we'll start with that context for Jrue Holiday, attaching two second round picks to him. It's like a 2031 and a 2032, or maybe 2030 and 2031. So I don't think they're really that important, but regardless, we had to attach assets to trade Anthony to the Celtics and get back a 35 as of a week ago. Jrue Holiday, who's on an ascending contract, 32, 35, and 37 million, I believe. What was your first reaction when seeing that trade?
Well, dude, I just first think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious that the Blazers organization had to wait until both of us were not in the state of Oregon,
Yeah.
or even honestly in the West Coast at all. Usually in California, but I was on a plane back from Florida. You were in another continent
Yep.
because they knew this shit would go
Yeah,
down.
they're like, oh,
They
we
tried
got
to
him
do
now.
this
Yeah.
without us, or with us nearby.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, I first heard, like I just said, on a plane back from Florida. Sadly, I had to spend a lot of time in Florida. Um, and I had signed up for free texting
Yeah.
about 15 seconds earlier. And I get a text from huge shout out to Perry, who's been my Woj over the last few days because I've been in Florida and, working and not able to look at my phone. But he texted me 15 seconds after I signed up for free texting, just in all caps. It said, "Go live." And I'm like,
Oh god.
immediately, I'm like, and I go like, "What happened?"
Yeah.
I'm gonna see. He sent me it. Drew for Anthony. I mean, my first reaction was genuinely sadness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to say. I don't know if you saw this, but I mean, we already knew Ant was the longest tenured Blazer.
Hmm.
He's the only guy who's still from the conference finals team.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to put this out really quick. The longest tenured Portland Trailblazers, you know who it is?
Shaden?
It's Shaden Sharp.
It's Shaden Sharp by like a couple hours over Jabari, right?
Yeah, which is so yeah, that's a good point. Which is so wild because it doesn't feel like we've made. I mean, obviously the Dame trade was massive. We made a couple of moves there, but like I think most fans would argue that we've kind of stayed put a little bit for
Yeah.
the most part over the last couple of years. And our longest tenured player is Shaden Sharp. So it's like actually when you think about it, we made a lot of moves. But yeah, initially I was sad. This is a guy who's been with us for a while. He's a guy that you and I really believed in. He's a guy I still really believe in. I think he's a guy who, put in the right position, is going to make a huge impact. I've always said Ant was a good player who's guarded like he's a great player, and our own coaches create opportunities for him like he's a bad player. You
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like no one made it easy for him. He didn't even, and that includes himself. Um, the first thing I thought actually was he's going to go off in Boston.
Yeah.
And that's like I still think that. I can't think I was kind of stoked for him because like, dude, I mean, mark my words, 6 months from now, Blazer fans are gonna be like, why didn't Ant play like this for us?
Yeah.
I can promise you that. I can promise you that. Because Boston, there is not a better team or position for him to be on than to be on the 3 point loaded, full of playmaking, defensive focused Celtics where he can just go off. And it's going to be beautiful to see. I can't wait to see it. And I want everyone who's stoked about this trade to be ready to be like, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
I can guarantee it. This is a big point. This is, I think, a big um, moment for my legacy.
Yeah. Putting your foot on the
Because if
line.
I'm wrong about this, it's one of those things. There's a couple things this week where it's like, if I end up being wrong about this, I need to really think that maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. The first thing
it
is Ant, and the other stuff is some of the draft stuff that we'll
yeah.
talk about in another video.
Well, I think
But
I think you're not alone in that because I think Cronin is right there with you in terms of like and he's kind of on the opposite end, right? Where he's like, I'm ready to give up Ant for an aging Jrue Holiday who's pretty expensive, who's kind of redundant in what we do. He fits the identity. And here's the thing to me, it's like I totally see the blueprint of he fits the identity. and he's defensive minded. I think our defense is going to be awesome to watch. Like, and that's what we're looking for. I do. I think he's still a really good defender. He looked a little off towards the playoffs, but I chalk that up to injury and just the fact that the Celtics as a whole kind of collapsed against the Knicks. Like, he didn't really play the Magic series, came back, tried to play through the hamstring, didn't look good. So I think he's still got juice. But to our other point, you're trading a guy who's at best at the tail end of his prime, if not out of it and like getting worse. And that's a stretch to even say he's still like maybe in his prime a little bit. For a guy who's at worst like already in his prime, right? And so you're seeing like the gamble can switch so quickly. Like it can look bad so fast, especially like you said when Anfernee gets in a 3-point heavy offense. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and you put Jrue in an offense that is gonna struggle unless Scoot, Shaden, and Denny all at once kind of just figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's
Which
gonna
Denny, I don't think we're worried about. Scoot and
no,
Shaden, well, as we talked about, are two of the biggest coin flips I've ever seen, where it's like it's either going to work out really well or really bad,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Um, well, here's the thing. I know you said, we're going to have a great defense. I agree with you on that, but we in the second half of the season, the last 41 games of the season, already had or were we second or third in
We
defensive
were
rating?
we were third from the 41st for the last 41 games. We were
Yeah.
fourth in defensive rating, past the All Star break.
Yeah. So in the second half of the season, we were third in the NBA, and we were like point 0.1 away from being second, something crazy like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm misremembering. But we had a top three defense in the NBA last in the second half of the season. With Klingon starting last season, we had the second best defensive rating in the NBA. We were gonna have a great defense next season, unless we like really lean in again to Aiton and Sharp as our starting together, which I assume that I think, especially now looking at what just happened in the draft, I assume Aiton's gone, which I will
Yeah,
be. I will do. What's it called? We do.
I
What are those called?
don't know.
When you say, when you go,
A roller coaster.
kids love doing that. They do. They go on their hands and they do a spin in the air.
A cartwheel.
I'll do a cartwheel. That's what it is. Well, I mean, I literally, my whole job is like 20 kids a day
Yeah, I'm
being
surprised you didn't know that one.
like Brad, check this shit out, and it's like the worst cartwheel
Oh,
I've seen in my entire
yeah,
life, and I'm like, dude, that was awesome.
yeah. And that you'll do one of those if
Yeah,
Aiden
exactly. So
Aiden's
be
out
ready
here.
for that. But in my mind, we're gonna have the second. I think I was like, ready for us to have a top three defense in the NBA next season.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think Jrue changes that. I think he might make us slightly better, but I think we were going to still be second or third unless people were expecting us to pass the Thunder as the best defensive team in the NBA. Because last season, I would say with the lineups I expect us to run next season, I think we have the second best defensive lineup in the NBA with Tumani, Klingon, Denny. I think that's immediately an elite defense.
yeah,
I don't think adding Jrue really it makes it slightly better. I don't think it's a difference maker because we already had that set in stone from last season. I mean, last 41 games of the season, when you're looking at the young team, I mean, the Pacers are the perfect example of this. Everyone's kind of shocked they were in the finals, and you're like, wait, in the second half of the season, they had the best record. People like to downplay, late season basketball. I think, especially for a young team, it's the thing that you should be looking at most. I don't care how we played in the first half of the
yeah,
season last year because we're the youngest team in the NBA. I care about the second half of the season, and we had a top three, arguably when you could say top two with what we were going into next season, because assuming Klingon's going to start. Jrue at 35 years old was still a good defender last year. I don't think he was great, but he was still very productive, which is tough to do at the point guard position. It's the hardest defensive position to. It's both. It's kind of interesting. It's the um, hardest position to actually make a real impact at, but also it's the easy. It's the easiest one to also. Sorry, let me re-say this. It's the hardest one to make a positive impact at, and the easiest one to for the negative impact not to really matter.
yeah, yeah. I see what you mean.
So and that's kind of why I say that because everyone's like, "Oh, Ant's a bad defender." It's like, yeah, Ant's a bad defender, but All of our best defensive lineups last year, he was a part of.
Yeah, and he was
You know,
defending. He was defending the fifth best offensive player
exactly. It doesn't.
on
Your
the
fifth
court.
best defender, if you're a point guard, it doesn't matter that much. And people are gonna be like, "Oh no, the NBA right now is all about matchup hunting." That's absolutely true. But if you are smart, you can hide a guy like Ant. He's not like because he's quick off his feet, blah 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 blah. He's not like he's this like slow-footed fat power forward who just was going to get destroyed on pick and rolls. He's
Yeah,
never going to be the guy guarding the pick. So it's like it's not really that important that he was that bad of a defender. And our
yeah,
defensive rating in the second half of the season showed that. So yeah, Jrue at 35 is still a good defender. He's going to make us a better defense. Is he going to make us the best defense in the NBA instead of the second best? I don't really think so. Did we just become a team without a single great shooter? Yes, I do think that. I think there's potential, especially if he gets a lot of minutes, and especially if Scoot doesn't look like an all-star, which I don't really expect him to still next season. Or, not even all-star, but like a really, really good player. I don't think that's going to be Scoot next year. I could see us losing more games next year. I could see us, or maybe not more, but probably finishing with the same record as we did this year, being kind of hovering on a 30 to 35 point team.
I
Because
think
I think we're gonna have a marginally better defense because Drew's 35, and I know you talked about how he got hurt, so that's like he could bounce back from that. But
well,
what happens when you're 35 years old, and especially if you're a point guard, is you get hurt and you don't really get better.
yeah,
It's kind of like, oh,
it kind of starts the decline.
that's where it goes.
Yeah, I think. Well, to that last point, if with all this going on, and the draft we'll talk about in the next video, but if we don't get better, it's red flags all over the place.
Hmm.
Um, with these moves we're making, because this Jrue Holiday trade was on paper a win now move. I think it does make us immediately better in the short term. Um, because I do think he can mask the defensive limitations of Shaden and the ones
True.
that are currently there for Scoot. Because Scoot, I think we believe can be a good defender, but he's not
Yes.
right now. So I think he is insurance that that defense will stay really good. Like I have a ton of faith that that's the case, and he's been a career really good catch and shoot 3-point shooter,
Yeah.
which can hopefully still translate, and
Because we did
hopefully
such a good job of using Ant as a catch and shoot
I
3-point
know,
shooter.
right? It's like we had that already. So I do think, and people talk a lot about how we need to pave the way for Scoot, pave the way for Shaden. This is doing that while still not just releasing Ant for a future first round pick and putting it all on them. There is someone there who can run the offense a little bit, who can play off ball. But I think he's going to be a little bit more willing to let Scoot start if Scoot demands that, to be used interchangeably next to either of them. If the two of that, if Scoot and Shaden aren't working together, so one like they're in crunch time or starting lineups, those two can be together. Because really, I mean, Anfernee and Shaden next to each other, it wasn't working great. That kind of goes. I mean, the
You're right.
two of them as a backcourt is probably the worst. Beside, I mean, it's top bottom. We'll call it bottom five worst. So I think in our like world where we supported Ant, we had a whole video saying keep Ant, right? And I think in that it was the hope that like Ant or Shaden could come off the bench and be a flamethrower scorer, and there's just ways to use them interchangeably where it's not this rigid you're the starter, you're better than him type mentality, and that's tough to get around. And I think we found a way to swap that out, and find an escape hatch for Scoot and Shaden. But I think, I mean, we see it, it's everyone sees it clearly now, and I think everyone's fine with it for the most part. I think you and I were a little more scared of this, but it is on Scoot and is on Shaden now to take this team and take these reps now that they're going to get this usage. Their usage rate, Shaden's is already pretty high. The usage rate's going to go up now, and they have to be efficient. They have to be good, and they have to you know pass the ball, get others involved. Like Denny's still going to get his touches, obviously, but they are now running the show, and the infrastructure is around them. And I think a lot of people are fine with that. But like I kind of said at the beginning of this rant, if things don't
Is this your
look
idea of a
good,
rant? the most like well
Yeah.
thought out,
I
mild
know.
mannered.
This angry rant. Um,
Relax, Jethro. Jesus.
um, if they don't show immediately, kind of that like, oh wow, like they took a step or this is working and they're playing well next to Jrue, like the clock with again with all these moves we made, the clock and the pressure has really risen to the surface. So it's we gotta come out the gates hot, and I do think we will. We'll talk later on kind of about expectations for the season. I feel good about us, and I think we're going to be better than people think. But now we've turned that clock up to where if we're not, it's a problem. It's like a big problem.
100%. And actually, I love what you say about Drew next to Shaden because I 100% agree. That's the biggest positive from this trade is all of a sudden Shaden becomes there's more lineups where Shaden is much more playable
Mm-hmm.
because Shaden didn't do well with Ant last season.
Yeah,
On both ends, it was like all of a sudden it's Ant's defense looks worse because he's playing next to Shaden. He doesn't have a guy to make up for it, as opposed when he was playing with when Ant was playing with Denny, two, and Jeremy. It's like Ant clinging like Ant's bad defense didn't really matter.
yeah,
When you put Shaden there next to him, all of a sudden it was glaring because Shaden was such a bad defender last season, the worst on the team, I would argue. Um, Now all of a sudden you can instead of hiding Ant's bad defense, you can hide Shaden's.
mm-hmm.
That makes Shaden infinitely more playable uh, throughout the game, which is awesome. That is definitely no matter what how you see the Drew trade or the Ant trade. That's a huge positive.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I want to emphasize because a lot of people are seem to think that we got like Drew Holiday of 2 years ago. They're not as aware of the like decline he took, especially near the second half of the season.
It's risky.
And I'm not like I said, I said a minute ago, like, oh, when you're old and you get hurt and you decline, you don't get better 99% of the time. I don't 100% feel that way about him though. Because like you said, like he might have just had a small nagging injury that he tried to play through that, you know, made his game look worse than it really was at this moment. We've seen it happen before. I think of like, you know, Chris Paul at the end of his Houston run. People thought that that was when he was going to fade out. He had kind of like like a still really good, but like not the near Chris Paul level play that people were expecting at the very end of his Houston run. Then he came back to Oklahoma City, had an increased role, and basically was what I think we want,
Yeah,
like a smaller
yeah.
extent, what we want
It's I
Drew to
think
be.
him to Shea is at CP3 to Shea is kind of what we're the best case scenario for Drew to Scoot,
Sure.
right?
Just to
Yeah,
a lesser extent, because Chris Paul is like a top three,
yeah,
top four point guard in my eyes of all time. Um, so yeah, it's possible, and I would love that. I think realistically, we're gonna get a guy who probably looks more the same as he did at the end of last season. Doesn't bounce back to what he was before, but more the same, which was a 10-5, really solid defender.
mm,
Um, which like I'm excited about it because all of a sudden I worry a lot less about Shaden's fit.
yeah.
Now it's like instead of Shaden needing to improve both his defense and his shot, it's now I'm really super worried. He still needs to work on his defense, obviously, because Drew's not going to be there forever.
But it's not as
Um,
big of an issue, and it's
but
not.
hopefully, I mean, like I said, one of the things I have, or like you said earlier, we have a lot of faith in Scoot's defensive potential. There's still, I mean, he's just such a high energy, high hustle player. I'm still not remotely sold on him offensively still. I think people have gotten a little carried away with that stretch of basketball he had in was it January,
Yeah, it was like
February.
kind of
When
it was like the net. It was like the Nets game that he had,
Yeah,
and
good because the last 15 games of the season, he shot 30% from three. Post All Star break, he shot, I think it was 32 or 33% from three.
yeah,
People, Blazer fans love, and I understand why, because like you want to be as optimistic as possible about Scoot. Like to act like he had this huge improvement in his shooting last season, but he more just had one stretch of really good games. Not even one stretch, but if you take out um,
you
the
take
Nets
out the Nets
game
game, yeah,
and the Knicks game where he went 8 of 10 and 4-4. And I'm not saying those don't count. They count. It happened. But Scoot takes a lot of shots. He gets a lot of really good shots. And if you're in the NBA and you're getting those shots, you're going to have games where you make a lot. You can look at the game log of any Moutier season at the beginning. That's an example. I think Scoot's going to be a lot better than Moutier now. I'm pretty positive about that.
Yeah.
Um, if you look at it, he had games like that. Every young player who had high usage in his first couple of years had games like that. And you take those two games out. If you look at how did Scoot shoot for 64 out of the 66 games of the season, he shot a little less. He shot about 32.8% from three. It's a small but not incredibly wonderful improvement from his rookie year.
Yeah.
In those last 15 games of the season, if you take out that one Knicks game where he was 4-4, he shot 27% from three in the last 15 games of the season. He had a really hot streak that was mostly dominated by that Nets game where he went 8 of 10, and then he immediately went back to what he was before for the last 15 and actually more games of the season. Like I said, 32% post All-Star break.
Yeah.
So this move, and the reason I bring that up is because if this move is to hand the keys to Scoot, it's a risky move to make. I like to think that the plan is Jrue is a type of player that in Chauncey and Cronin's eyes fit this team more until Scoot really is ready. So they're like, okay, Scoot's not quite ready yet. Um, but Ant wasn't the kind of player we wanted in front of him until then.
Yeah.
I get that because Jrue Moore does fit that mold. And he, like we already talked about, makes Shaden look a lot better, which is what we want. Because it sucks that the guy who was in front of Scoot was making our other young guy look worse, which we really like Ant. You have an Anfernee Simons jersey.
Yeah.
This is where we get the emotional attachment to him that makes me sad about him leaving.
Yeah.
Longest tenured Blazer. You have an Ant jersey. I was with you when you bought it.
Yeah.
The only game winner I have ever seen in person, and I've been to so many Blazer games. I am a we're I mean we're I'm a behind the hoop 300 level fiend of like last second $8 tickets, and I've been just to endlessly amazing games. I've only seen one game winner. It was you and I at the Nuggets game where
Yep.
Ant had that little scoop shot to win the game over Westbrook and Jokic, which is just one of the best live Blazer moments of my
Yeah.
life. Um, but he was not a great player to play next to Shaden. He did not fit the mold of the team. If you really want Shaden to look his best, I understand that. Jrue does do a good job of that. The thing I'm worried about is once Jrue really is done, which I'm assuming at the very latest is in, we can maybe get
3.
1 to 2 seasons of good Jrue.
I'd say at best you're getting 2 good seasons of Jrue. I think
At
that
absolute
third
best.
year. I think that third year is gonna sting probably.
Which is good because then we'll know for sure if Scoot's the guy.
Yeah.
If
That's
he's not, that sucks. It's one of the reasons we wanted to keep Ant is because we still think that. I mean, the comparison I always make is I like how Tyler Hero turned his game up this year.
yeah.
I thought he all of a sudden became an all-star, and I thought Ant, they are the most comparable. He's the most comparable guy. He's the most comparable guy to Ant in the league is Tyler Hero. In year 6 or 7, whenever Hero's in, he uh, turned his game up. I think Ant's going to do that in Boston. I thought it was
Yeah.
worth keeping him here to see if he would do that because we're still not sure if Scoot is the guy. But best case scenario, we get a year of good Jrue. Scoot shows that he's ready. He can come in because Scoot is the kind of player that can hide Shaden's defensive limitations
Yeah. Eventually, I think maybe not at
eventually.
this point. I think just to wrap us up, I you can see the blueprint, right? And with Anthony, it just felt like more of an insurance plan rather than a full pot commitment
Yeah.
to what's going on. And I think we're all at least understanding, or most people are fine with, let's push all the chips on Scoot, let him go.
To me, it's more
It's
pushing the
just
chips all in on Shaden.
yeah, it's the both of them, right? This is getting rid of that third guy like everyone wanted. I think just the issue with this move is that if it doesn't work, if Shaden and Scoot weren't working and we still had Anfernee, there was ways we could restructure around him, or at least Anfernee was an expiring contract. We had more flexibility. with this move, if Jrue doesn't work out, or if these guys don't work out, we've got this guy now for $35 million for 3 years, and we can't really get rid of him. And like it's just like I said, we're pushing in on this roster to be really good next year, and for Scoot and Shaden to be a big part of that. And I have faith in them. I have a lot of faith that we can be good. I truly think we're going to be a good team next year. But we're a little screwed if they don't. Um,
Can I
and
comment on what you said about the contracts really quick?
yeah,
Because there's two things. You know, I love saying there's two things and then forgetting one of them. I'm going to try really hard to not do that here. But there's two things. One, I never want to hear anyone complain about contracts ever again because we heard so much endless whining about Ant's contracts, and those same people are seemingly stoked that we got a much worse, much more expensive, and longer term contract in Jrue.
yeah,
So I honestly, most of the time, I don't care unless they're like really out there. I don't really care that much about contracts. I care about what you're
yeah.
if you're actually adding to the team.
I'll also just say real quickly that like,
Yeah,
and I've been asked on this like, with how cheap Denny is and how cheap Tumani is. Well, we had the whole video on it. Like,
yeah,
I'm okay spending some money in some kind of
exactly.
some bad spots. This is definitely not a great spot, but I am fine spending some extra money. I just kind of wish it was a. I thought there was probably a better opportunity out there, but we have this. It's fine.
And the second thing is one of the main things I've seen is like the positive about this Drew contract is that at the end of it, it'll be expiring and big, and we can use that expiring contract to trade for a star.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude. Give me the biggest effing break of my life. That is, if you think that Drew Holiday's contract, because I heard the same BS about Jeremy's contract when you signed him with, oh, in a few years, this is going to look great. No, it's not. We are not going to use Drew Holiday's contract to trade for a superstar in 3 years. What world are you guys living in where the Blazers are going to use a Drew Holiday expiring to land a star?
I mean,
That
that's where we're
like,
at with Aiton, and we can't. And he's 26, and we
yeah,
can't move it. So
yeah,
I there's a lot of question marks. I think it's not a great sign when a lot of analysts and pundits give you a bad trade grade, and everyone goes, "What?
yeah.
Why'd you do that?" I think the best outcome for those people have been like, "I get it. Yeah, I do see it, and it does make them better right now." And it's a tough look when it's like that.
But
So
I don't know if it does. We
I
just
don't
became the
know. We're
worst
gonna.
shooting team in the
It's
NBA.
That's the thing. It like
I
it
just hope
has
that
to. If
that
it
is
doesn't,
offset by the hopefully positive impact he has on Shaden.
yeah, yep,
That's the big positive is now there's no one at the point guard because I actually like Scoot and Shaden together.
in theory,
Idealistically,
yeah, in theory, yeah,
in theory, it's like um Ant just was terrible with Shaden. They did not fit well together. So the big positive is all of a sudden we have two point guards who really work well with Shaden. The one of the big concerns of Shaden being his defense is now you don't have to worry as much about it. He can
yeah,
even work on it with less pressure, which Shaden I think does not do well with a lot of um,
yeah.
pressure.
So
So that's the big positive. The big negative is, and this is what it's also hard to say this because the off season's not over. We've talked about Kennard is still available in free agency.
yeah,
I
but
still
our
want
we didn't suck up that much more money. It was only like $5 million. There's more moves to be had, but
exactly. So I don't want to judge the shooting yet, but as of right
the
now,
shooting's bad.
not just our shooting, but our shot creation, our shot making. And Drew's a good point guard. He really is. But like Ant's still a guy who can get you, and we've seen it so many times, like 20 points in a quarter.
Yeah,
He can heat up in a way that 10 guys in the NBA can.
yeah,
We've lost that. And it bailed us out in a lot of games.
yeah.
One of
So
my favorite moments of last year is going to Mavs. My brother and I went to Mavs Blazers, and Luca and Ant both had 20 plus in the third quarter. And you're watching, it's like Ant kind of looks better than Luca. They're doing the same thing, and Ant
yeah,
kind of looks better.
that was a great game.
We've lost that. Hopefully, we make up for it in free agency by getting shooter after shooter after shooter. As I was hoping to also do it in the draft. We'll talk about that in another video. That didn't happen, but we got very interesting guy that we'll talk about later. Yeah, I want to see what a team looks like at the end, but as of right now, the big positives, I think it fits really well for Shaden. It gives a guy who fits the team a little bit better, a guy who will is a more sensible transition, I guess, to Scoot if Scoot becomes that guy, which we've talked about, we think is basically a 50-50 coin flip that he will. Um, the negatives of the contract's bigger, it's longer. He could easily not be that good given how he looked last year. He's 35. He's not getting younger. And we just became the worst shooting team in the NBA. My big concern
Hmm.
is we basically just became last year's Magic,
Yeah.
which has
Yep.
always been my concern with trading Ant. We've talked about it a million times. We trade Ant, we have the same problems as the Magic had last season.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a top 3 defense, I think, which is awesome.
It's gonna be
I kind
fun.
of still think we're going to no matter what because we have Tumani, Klingon, and Diddy on a team together,
Yeah.
and Jeremy. Honestly, let's give Jeremy some credit there too defensively. Um, but now we have potential to have a lockdown defensive team. Is it going to happen? I have no idea. And that's something what I like about us is that we're not afraid to be like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
We have no idea how Drew's going to look next year. And it's kind of
Yeah.
a bummer that we say that. We
Yeah.
have no clue if he's going to look old and hurt. Maybe he's going to have a nice little bounce back. Maybe he's going to look more of the same as he did at the end of last season. I think that's kind of more what it is. But a Jrue that looks more the same as last season is still a very good defender and a productive player that
Yeah.
will make Shaden look a lot better.
Yeah. Well, Drew, we hope you we hope you're awesome. I hope
Oh,
you're
one last thing. One last thing. I say one last thing.
yeah.
One of my least favorite tropes. I don't know if trope's the right word, but this idea that Drew's going to come in and be this like mentor that turns everything around single handedly. That so rarely actually happens that a vet comes in and makes a difference. Sure, 100%. He's going to come in and probably make a small difference. We already have Chauncey Billups, who's a Hall of Fame point guard and one of the greatest defensive point guards, too, of all time. That's his job to
Yeah.
do. Jrue is not, he's going to help in some small ways for sure. He's not the mentor difference maker that people are making about. That doesn't happen. People always fantasize about that. The prime example being Chris Paul with
Yeah.
Oklahoma City.
Everyone's hoping it's like that, but
No,
we
Chris
did already
Paul
have a
is
guy.
not the reason
Yeah.
SGA is who he is right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was. I mean, Chase said he was super helpful. He was super helpful, I think, in like emotionally. But
Yeah.
SGA was already looking like an amazing player. He was already fantastic. He, of course, made some small differences that probably made him a better player. But he wasn't the difference maker between SGA being a future MVP or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a bunch of BS. And I'm sick of people like, oh, he's going to be a mentor that turns Scoot into an all-star and a defensive player of the year. That's going to happen no matter what if it's meant to happen.
Yeah.
Will Jrue help with that a little bit in some small ways? Of course. Is it the yes or no difference maker? No. So I'm sick of people saying that. You can't find any examples of that actually happening
Yeah.
ever. Thank you.
uh now that that's off your chest, we will see how it turns out. I think you guys have gotten a good feel for how we feel about this trade.
Yeah,
There's
we
risk.
let out all of our thoughts,
Yeah, with the
which I'm happy about.
we're risky. We're risking it for winning now, but again, winning cures all. So there's a
Yeah.
good chance. There's a good chance I think that we could turn around and be like, this was good. But there's also
Add some
a
great
lot
shooters around it, and all of a sudden it looks a lot better. I'll just say that.
more
Not
moves
as
to be
someone who
made
is like
for
kind
sure.
of like middle, I feel mediocre about the trade is a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Add some shooters around it, all of a sudden it looks a lot better.
yeah. Well, thank you guys. Coming again. I'm coming to you all the way from España right now. So
Oh, you're
appreciate
not in
your
France
patience.
anymore?
Yeah, moved on from France. We're in Spain
I was
now.
gonna say that art in the back. I was like, that is not
That's
would
not
not be in a
French art.
French. Are you in a hotel?
We're in Airbnb in
Nice.
San Sebastian. Great city, great food. If you guys ever get a chance to come, but we will be recording a video on Hansen Yang or Yang Hansen. We'll discuss how to say his name properly after
No, I
this.
think
But
Yong is gonna be on the back.
what? Yeah,
On the
Young
back
was
of the
on the
jersey,
back,
it's
but
gonna
that
be
was
Yong.
Yao was on the back. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it in a sec. Appreciate you
No, it
guys.
was. No, it
Yeah,
wasn't.
appreciate you guys. Take care.